Welcome to our event, Youth Set the Agenda for a Healthy Green Recovery, organized by the World Health Organization, Science Policy Circle, Student Energy, the Resilient 40, Oxford Smith School for Enterprise and the Environment, and Oxford Net Zero. My name is Benjamin Strzelecki, and I serve as the global focal point of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. And together with Dr. Maria Neira, Director of the Department of Environment, Climate and Health of the World Health Organization, will be moderating the session today. Today is the first day of the 9-day series of Race to Zero dialogues led by COP high-level champions. The goal of the program is to mobilize businesses, cities, regions, and other stakeholders to rally around the goal of zero carbon recovery and net zero emissions by 2050. Today's events are focused on the nexus of climate, energy, and health, a crucial theme in the times of COVID-19 pandemic. Youth have been a crucial stakeholder involved in advocating for climate action and advancing sustainable energy for all in the last few years. Now, we are expecting that young people will become a driving force behind healthy green recovery. And during today's event, we will hear suggestions on how to achieve it from both youth and senior speakers. Maria, over to you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. And I suppose when you say from the youth and seniors speakers, I am perfectly in the second category more than the first one. But anyway, I'm very happy to be joining you today. And today we are starting this race to zero. And to initiate, to start a race, you need a good motivation. You need a very good physical status. And when I think on the motivation, I try to imagine the 7 million premature deaths that we have every year caused by exposure to air pollution. I visualize all of those 7 million deaths around the globe in the different countries where even today, the moment we are talking, the society is facing the COVID-19 pandemic, but at the same time, they are facing very high levels of pollution in certain parts of the world at the moment we are talking. If you look at your maps, you will see very red spots in terms of high pollution in India continent and Southeast Asia at the moment. So as you can imagine, we have already an incredible motivation to start this race to make sure that at the end, people will be more healthier. And hopefully, where at the end, we will have zero deaths from air pollution, zero deaths from climate change, and zero deaths from all the diseases we could prevent by creating this different environment for our society. WHO has a couple of months, no, more than a couple of months, long time ago already, issued what we call it a manifesto for a healthy and green recovery. And we included the 6 prescriptions that I think will be very relevant to this discussion today, because the number 3 is a prescription about the importance for the health of the people to have access to renewable, clean sources of energy. This is something that is conditioning our health in an incredible way. And this is the reason why this dialogue will have a lot of importance. We need the commitment and the engagement of the youth. And I know that they are very much committed. If we put together our forces, the youth and the seniors and the science and the motivation we have from different agencies, I think we will make something hopefully positive and with a great impact. Don't forget that the reason we are racing at the moment is to zero emissions, but those zero emissions will have an incredible positive impact on the health of the people. Therefore, it can be as well a race to zero deaths. And this can be a great motivation, at least for me, is a very powerful motivation to move into that. The youth are providing us a very strong network and of course their passion and the fact that they need to start to think and build the world they want after this pandemic. I suppose they are very much on a fatigue of the pandemic, therefore offering them some positive message, optimism and hope on how we can recover it better today and together it will be very important. So in that sense, I think with your permission, Benjamin, I will introduce the first of our speakers, our high-level panelist, Mr. Francesco La Camera. He's the Director General of IRENA, which is the Agency on Renewable Energy. So I think he is very well placed to give us the energy we need to initiate this dialogue. Francesco, over to you. Thank you very much. Francesco, you're mute. You have to unmute, please.
Sorry, I was saying that naturally the energy should be renewables, Maria. So thank you to you, and thank you to Benjamin. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you today. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the vulnerabilities of our current economic system. It has reminded us of the importance of embracing growth strategies that are in line with the long-term objective of the Paris Agreement and of the Sustainable Development Goals. The message that IRENA has been pushing forward in the past month is that by placing renewable-based energy transition at the center of national recovery plans, governments can kickstart economies again and simultaneously tackle the climate crisis. There are incredibly compelling reasons for recovery measures to prioritize a renewable-based energy transition. Renewables have proven to be the more resilient than other parts of the energy sector during the pandemic, partly because they are more cost competitive than coal and other fossil fuels. In addition to being cost competitive, a transition to renewable-based energy system comes with a number of socioeconomic benefits, including health benefits. At a time when many people have lost their jobs, IRENA has shown that embedding the energy transition strategies in the economic measures and stimulus plans could bring an additional 5.5 million jobs in the coming 3 years, compared to if we would go for a more muted policies response. In fact, investing in renewables and other energy transition-related technologies create close to 3 times more jobs than investing in fossil fuels for each million spent. Accelerated uptake of renewables, energy efficiency, and energy access can kickstart much-needed economic recovery, drive sustainable development in line with the global climate objective, and ensure a just transition that leaves no one behind. The energy system is integral part to our lives and livelihood. IRENA is a custodian, along with WHO, in tracking the progress of SDG 7. Our latest tracking report shows that over 1 billion people have gained access to electricity in the last decade, and then promising progress toward SDG 7 has been made. However, it also shows that efforts are far behind what is needed to reach universal access by 2030, and the pandemic could derail advances unless we ensure sustainable energy is an integral part of the global response. As of 2018, 709 million people live without access to electricity. 550 million of those in sub-Saharan Africa alone. Access to electricity is vital to power medical care and emergency appliances, including vaccine refrigerators. In the absence of renewable power, reliable power, many life-saving interventions cannot be undertaken safely or at all. Off-grid renewable energy solutions represent cost-effective, rapidly deployable, reliable option for the electrification of healthcare facilities in rural areas. This can have a transformative impact on people's lives. The health benefits of renewable energy technologies are immense, including through reducing air pollution. Currently, over 7 million people die, as Marina said, from exposure to air pollution every year. This is 1 in 8 of all deaths. 90% of people breathe outdoor air with pollution level exceeding WHO air quality guidelines. Our urgent coordinated action is needed today. In response to the pandemic, we need to intensify our efforts in ensuring the long-term sustainability of the people and the planet. Our youth community, you all, are a key agent in our pursuit of this. I have every hope that you will continue to actively engage your community, your policy makers and governments to make the right choice in building back anew. We cannot afford to bail out the past. Look to the future. Thanks for your attention. Back to you, Maria. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Francesco. And I think you are absolutely right. If we are talking to the new generation, how a new generation will even think about using fossil fuels. I mean, something that is so much from the past. If there is something that is from the past, are the fossil fuels. So let's put those fossils in the museum, maybe, and start to concentrate on the energy of the future. And thank you as well, Francesco, for giving hope to the youth by telling them that there will be new jobs and very interesting jobs and jobs for the future. If we invest on renewable sources of energy, there will be a future for them as well as workers and contributing to this economic recovery. So once again, thank you very much. Over to you, Benjamin.
Thank you so much, Maria. And once again, thank you, Mr. Lacamera, for your great support for youth engagement in global efforts toward the clean energy transition. Under your leadership, IRENA hosted the first IRENA Youth Forum and IRENA Youth Talks, and we are looking forward to future engagements when it's so needed in the times of post-pandemic recovery. So now we will move to the 3 dialogues, where we will hear remarks on different aspects of youth engagement in healthy green recovery. During each dialogue, youth speaker will set the scene with their opening remarks, and then we'll have 2 sets of questions and answers between the youth speaker and senior speaker. After 3 dialogues, we will move to Q&A, where we will collect questions from the audience and engage in discussion about the practical steps that young people can take to act on the climate crisis. You can already start posting your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. And also don't forget to tweet and promote this session on social media. You can use hashtags Race to Zero and Healthy Recovery. So now we'll move to the first dialogue on the topic of clean energy in health sector. Our youth speaker will be Prabha Patil, who's the final year medical student from India and serves as the president of the Medical Students Association of India, a network of more than 20,000 medical students across the country. She's also an executive board member of the Young Professionals Chronic Disease Network. She will engage in dialogue with James Earlam, who's the chairperson of the Climate, Energy and Health Special Interest Group in the Public Health Association of South Africa, which advocates for equitable access to the basic conditions necessary to achieve good quality health for all South Africans. So now, Purva, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and very happy to have this platform, and thanks so much for having me over. With no further ado, I will quickly jump on to my opening remarks. And I will start with a personal reflection of one of my days in the hospital as a medical student. Earlier this year, I joined a healthcare facility as an observer where during a surgery, we were faced with a power cut. And sheer panic broke out, as one would expect, in the operation theater. And while nothing unfortunate happened, the situation was pretty well mitigated. I learned a lesson that day. Reliable basic infrastructure, in particular electricity, is a critical enabling factor in improving health systems and also consequently improving health outcomes, especially in countries like mine, in developing countries. While there were no casualties per se in that incident, just about 2 months back, a hospital in my hometown lost 2 COVID patients who were on ventilatory support due to a cutoff in the oxygen supply after a power cut. And with doctors and medical students like me working around the clock to save patients, imagine how helpless one would feel to lose lives to something like power cut. Which again speaks of the necessity of reliable, clean energy for an efficient health system. And while the experiences I shared might seem like one-off instances, they're really not. According to a WHO fact sheet, over 289,000 women globally die from pregnancy or delivery-related complications every year. And a good proportion of these deaths are preventable with something as simple as lighting or operating and blood transfusion services. And a study conducted in 11 countries in sub-Saharan Africa found that an average of 26% of the health facilities reported no access to electricity. And only 28% of health facilities on an average had reliable electricity supply. Unreliable electricity supplies often result in loss of almost half of the vaccine supplies because of cold chain failure, as well as failing of almost 70% of the electrical medical equipment used in developing countries again. And while the relationship between health infrastructure and energy might seem pretty straightforward because of its dependence on electricity, energy is also very closely linked with certain diseases and conditions that many people and communities like mine suffer from. And there's ample evidence that proves fossil fuel consumption stimulates lung and respiratory diseases. Smoke exposure is a big risk factor for various cancers. And nearly 3 billion people still continue to cook on rudimentary biomass in cold stoves. And smoke exposures cause almost half the deaths from pneumonia in children under 5, which itself is so concerning. And these effects are not really limited to just smoke or the respiratory system, but extend to the cardiovascular system, the psychoendocrine system, and also the reproductive system. And the mental health implications are, again, not unknown or are not unrelated. While our health systems look like they're independent, we often fail to recognize that the effectiveness of our very health systems are not only dependent on the people running it, but is very directly dependent on the energy supply and access systems that support it. And moving to renewable, clean sources isn't really an option. It's a requirement. It's a necessity at this point. And the COVID crisis also has put this whole lattice under tremendous strain. And young people like myself and my colleagues are picking up speed and actively contributing to a healthy transition to clean energy, seeing some light in the darkness that COVID brought, be it in the form of protests to drive away fossil fuels, or be it in the shape of hackathons to create health facilities that are clean and sustainable. But while we move in that direction, what we truly need to achieve clean energy and health for all is a powerful intergenerational response. And having said that, I would like to ask Mr. James, how does the Public Health Association of South Africa meaningfully involve young people to further action in academia on health, climate, and energy nexus within South Africa? And if there are any best practices that other institutions could adopt from the Public Health Association of South Africa?
Thank you very much for that question, and good afternoon, everyone. So, as has been said, I chair a special interest group on climate, energy, and health within the Public Health Association of South Africa. It's a fairly new group. It was established in 2016 to advocate for healthy and progressive energy policy in South Africa. And it's a multidisciplinary group of public health professionals and student members. And first, I can just say that as an educator in climate change and health at the Faculty of Health Sciences, I believe very strongly that health professionals have an important role to play in protecting public health from climate change. So when I teach, my goal is to move students from understanding the basic concepts and evidence of climate change to seeing themselves as agents of change in protecting health. And within the Climate, Energy and Health Special Interest Group, we have other educators who likewise are involved in efforts to integrate teaching about climate and energy and health and environmental health into their curricula. So we have within the Public Health Association of South Africa various special interest groups. One of them is particularly led by the youth, and the purpose of that group is to provide input to develop appropriate policies to empower and develop youth in the public health system. The special interest groups also provide a community of practice for ongoing efforts to integrate education for sustainable healthcare into our health sciences curricula to better equip students with the knowledge and skills that they need to be agents of change in their roles as graduates in a country like South Africa, a country that has historically contributed much to the emissions because of its carbon-intensive economy, but which also has the potential to be a leader in moving to a renewable energy future. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that from my colleagues. So I asked some of my young activist colleagues to share their insights about how they can engage youth. And one said that, you need to find your source of inspiration and motivation and keep reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Utilize your support team, recognize that, you're not fighting this battle alone. And another said that understand that there's much to learn, not only from the professionals, but from the stories and lived experiences of all members of society. And by doing this, you have a great beginning as a young person. So within the Public Health Association of South Africa Special Interest Group, we involve young people, we encourage them to tell their stories, and within our teaching in the Faculty of Health Sciences, we include those stories from activists who are working in this sphere. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I do highly appreciate your effort in trying to educate young people to understand the broader implications of lack of access to energy, clean energy, and even the health impacts that surround this whole chain. And I know as a medical student, I feel like I learn very clinical points in terms of how climate and health are related, but there is truly a very pressing need to go beyond and understand the whole system and complications and further implications of the linkage between health and energy and leading up to also climate. With that, I have another question for you. As a young person that's just starting out on the journey of working on the health, climate, energy nexus, I do find it frustrating sometimes, and I'm sure that this is a feeling that a lot of young people also echo. And it often feels like a very difficult road to walk on. What advice, based on your personal experience, would you have for young people starting out on this journey of engaging in the climate, health, and energy nexus?
Well, get involved. So find organizations that match your interest and motivation. As the one activist said, you know, keep reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Get involved, utilize your skills, utilize the opportunities to exercise your leadership. And listen, you know, listen to what affected communities are saying. If you come from a community that is affected, mobilize people using every network that you have access to. I think we are all agents of change. We are all affected by the climate crisis. We are all consumers contributing to the climate crisis, and being able to share your story in a way that connects with others. And as a health professional, being able to exercise and use the voice that you have can be very powerful. And then use your skills in writing, petitioning. Within the special interest group, we've written to our Minister of Energy, our Minister of Health. We've engaged media partners in giving, you know, further publicity to those letters and calls. We've participated with other sectors within our society who are working in the climate, energy, health space to amplify the voice of the public health community. It's not easy. I mean, there are a lot who, given the crisis in public health in our country, feel that they're doing enough just working on the front lines of patient care. So one constantly has to remind them to step back and to look at the bigger picture, the environmental and social determinants of health, and the incredible opportunity that healthcare professionals have to lend their voice to advocacy in that space. And I'm proud to be part of a faculty that is starting to do that more and more. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Purva, and thank you so much, James, for your great insights on how those issues come together and how the passion, how our passion of climate can be the fueling force for going forward and acting on healthy green recovery. And the examples that you brought up are really meaningful, and I believe many young people can relate, and also your advice will be useful for many. So now I would like to move to our second dialogue on engaging vulnerable communities in climate action. And our first speaker will be Jordan Bernoff, who's a member of the Black Lake First Nation in Treaty 8 in Canada. She is leading her community's energy efficiency project as part of Indigenous Clean Energy's national initiative to address the housing and energy needs of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities in Canada. Jordan is a member of Indigenous Clean Energy's Advisory Council and a co-chair of the 2021 7th-Gen Indigenous Youth Energy Summit. And together with Jordan, we have Amjad Abdullah, who's the head of partnership at IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. Previously to this appointment, he served in climate, renewable energy, and environment portfolios at the government of Maldives and international organizations, including as the Director General for Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment of the Maldives. So now, over to you, Jordan.
Good morning. Tanse, Jordan Bernoff, Nisihkasen, Sagatuah Khotse. My name is Jordan Bernoff. I am from Black Lake First Nation, a member of Black Lake First Nation in Northern Saskatchewan, and I grew up in the small community of Isla Cross, also in Northern Saskatchewan in Canada. I'm so excited to join you guys today. I think especially the topic that we'll be speaking on today. So a little bit about my background, just to further that, through the Indigenous Clean Energy Bringing It Home program, and I guess how it applies to our discussion today on COVID-19 and the health impacts as it relates to energy. An interesting thing that I've been thinking about recently is how you know, the health of our homes and communities, and how a lot of the gaps that have existed for a very long time in communities, how that's really coming to light now through this pandemic as we move forward, and especially in Canada as we're moving into a chilly winter here. So I guess my background in that area is our community was chosen as one of 6 communities in Canada to lead a Bringing It Home initiative through Indigenous clean energy. And so what we're doing is a community-wide energy efficiency project, which is quickly snowballing, and you know, we have a lot of regional interest in also developing that for other communities, because I think there's such a huge need. And if you know the climate, I guess, in Saskatchewan, and by climate I mean the energy ecosystem that we exist in here, there's not a lot of opportunity for renewable energy projects. We're very limited in what we can do. So I think energy efficiency, it's just a natural transition and natural progression in that adventure. So yeah, there's quickly becoming a lot of interest in this. And as we are moving forward toward winter, this is becoming increasingly of more interest to people. And not only is it a matter of money, because we see ridiculous energy bills that our communities are facing, but also it's a matter of health and well-being, right? Families are choosing between energy and paying their power bills or feeding their families. So it's a very real issue, and something that it's often, it falls on deaf ears in Saskatchewan here, where half of our province is, the northern piece of our province is predominantly Indigenous, and this I think is a greater impact area. So to me personally, you know, that's kind of where some of my passion and my drive comes from, is to help support the communities that you know, often go unheard, and where you know, programs like energy efficiency and housing, this is one of the biggest crises or biggest gaps in our country, really. And I think a lot of other Indigenous communities around the world can also identify with that as an issue. So I guess I will move on to my question for our lovely guest here. So globally, how are we ensuring approaches and solutions for Indigenous communities are a part of the collective transition to clean energy? So we have programs like I said, the Bringing It Home initiative, ICE's Catalyst 2020 program. That's a program I was also involved in, the Indigenous Clean Energy's Catalyst program. It's an energy leadership program. And also a lot of the programs through Student Energy that support Indigenous youth, Indigenous communities, and vulnerable communities. So how are we ensuring approaches and solutions are part of the collective transition to clean energy? And how are we including Indigenous voices in the design phase of new approaches? That includes policies and funds that support clean energy, entrepreneurship, research, and development. Yeah, that is my opening question for you.
Benjamin, you are mute. Okay.
Yeah. Amjad, you're muted now. We can't hear you. Oh, now
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Benjamin, Maria. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this very important dialogue. Race to Clean Energy. You set the agenda for healthy green recovery, organized by the WHO. Although I feel more younger when I speak with the youth, in this very important gathering. First of all, let me try to reflect on the questions that was posed. Obviously, IRENA has partnered with the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ISMOD, to advance the understanding of the energy needs in food value chains in remote mountain communities in the Himalayan Hindu Kush region in South Asia, and facilitating the deployment of decentralized renewable energy solutions across them. Obviously, this initiative is aimed at catalyzing socio-economic development and informing the transition to low carbon and climate resilient development in these remote and delicate ecological settings. The assessment will identify suitable decentralized renewable energy solutions to add value in 4 food value chains. Through the partnerships and knowledge management, we as IRENA works towards increasing the availability of data, knowledge, analysis, and awareness for informed decision making, considering the gender and social inclusion of the different stakeholders in the Hindu Kush region. We as IRENA convened a consultative workshop with the 3 different major stakeholder groups needed to deploy renewable energy solutions at speed and at scale. Local enterprises, policymakers, and enablers such as financing institutions, development agencies, and foundations. Another way that we as IRENA is supporting this process is through renewable readiness assessment for its member countries, which is a country-driven process that assesses the suitability of the conditions and identifies short and medium-term actions to improve the conditions to accelerate the deployment of renewable energy. Consultations with all the stakeholders ensures that issues pertaining to indigenous land access and rights is addressed through the government's policies and enabling frameworks. Let me try to address the second question. How does we as IRENA plan to sustainably make space for and support indigenous knowledge and systems and provide a platform to share the view of knowledge keepers? Obviously, one of the things is to provide clean, affordable, and modern energy to all is a global challenge, and is not just limited to developing nations, it's a global issue. Some of our member states have expressed interest to cooperate with IRENA on highlighting renewable energy solutions for remote and indigenous communities, many of which are very difficult to access through traditional power infrastructure, as you may recall. The agency aims to promote multi-stakeholder dialogue amongst its members facing similar challenges for transitioning remote communities to renewable energy, support to the deployment of targeted knowledge products, and provide project facilitation support. IRENA is also committed to assisting our member countries in project facilitation and access to finance and entrepreneurship and innovation. Indigenous communities can benefit from IRENA's network hub and partnership initiatives to develop suitable indigenous knowledge systems and share best practices, lessons learned, and utilization of indigenous knowledge to replicate and scale up renewable energy and energy efficiency projects in developing countries. Let me turn it to the last point, the last question. With the world today having an unprecedented 79.5 million displaced persons and refugees, we as IRENA has also worked in renewable energy in the context of humanitarian settings. These communities are particularly vulnerable, as an overwhelming majority of them are forced to live without basic access to energy, risk being left behind of host country energy plants. The agency cooperated with UNHCR and assessed the energy needs for 4 refugee camps in Iraq and Ethiopia. The assessment proposed renewable energy solutions to provide clean, cost-effective, and reliable energy to refugees and humanitarian organizations. Electrification programs are being implemented in countries lacking access to energy, and it is essential for both development partners and government institutions to collaborate on health center electrification in the development and implementation of rural electrification plans, strategies, and programs. Providing electricity to health centers must be part of the electrification efforts and deliverables from the very beginning. Cooperation is essential, not just in priority the electrification of healthcare, but also for sharing knowledge and research breakthroughs. Space for knowledge partnerships would allow academics and research institutions to carry out target research and collect data and develop knowledge products, presenting analysis of the effectiveness of electrification initiatives and health-related impacts of such initiatives for the recipient communities. In the context of collaboration between energy and health communities and between governments and international organizations, we as IRENA ongoing work in Burkina Faso, our agency is undertaking a sectoral assessment for the electrification of health facilities in the country. In close cooperation with Burkina's Ministry of Health and Energy, as well as consultants on the ground, to identify technical, policy, and institutional gaps and recommend implementation approaches. These cost declines have translated into off-grid renewable energy solutions becoming an economically sustainable option to address energy access needs of remote, unelectrified communities. The suitability of off-grid renewable energy technologies for provision of energy access in low resources setting is further enhanced by the fact that these technologies, in particular solar PV, are fast deployable, reliable, clean, resilient, and require minimal operation and maintenance and logistical costs as compared to fossil fuel technologies. I thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so you answered all my questions. I just have one more point, and I guess this was a question, but wasn't included, I guess. So as many countries have already adopted and ratified UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, I would like to see, as a part of, you know, what you just discussed, how you're identifying the gaps and looking at you know, finding better ways of moving forward and implementing projects and working with Indigenous and vulnerable communities. I would love to see, you know, something to support UNDRIP and how IRENA plans to not only, you know, work this into that plan, but action that and what that actually looks like. I think, you know, providing a platform for Indigenous voices, working to change policy and legislation, you know, that helps to better support the just transition for sustainable development, energy access and energy security and a low carbon economy. So, you know, I think in a really big way, we need to start thinking about, you know, what is UNDRIP? Where does that fit? That is a global conversation, and for organizations at the level of IRENA and everything that, you know, trickles down, like this is a big topic that we need to really discuss and include in our work in a big way. So yeah, I would love to see how IRENA plans to do that moving forward. But thank you for your time and your questions. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more and continuing the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan, and thank you so much, Amjad. Yeah, we definitely are looking forward to seeing how grassroots communities and indigenous communities in particular are being involved in climate transition. But that's part of a bigger theme of the role of young people in advancing the energy transition. And that's the topic of our third dialogue. The first speaker will be Asma Rouabia, who's a trainer in entrepreneurship, community solutions, social innovation, and leadership. She works as program manager at Code of Governance, which builds the capacity of decision makers in the field of sustainable development. And she was selected for the first IRENA Youth Forum. Currently, she serves as the regional focal point for MENA region of the SDG 70th constituency. And Asma will be in dialogue with Alex Lenferna, who's the secretary of the Climate Justice Coalition, a coalition of South African trade unions, civil society, and grassroots organizations, which advance climate action. So now I'm happy to hand over to Asma for her remarks and questions.
Thank you so much, Benji, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. Well, I will start quickly by giving a personal experience. So I have been active in advocating for the Sustainable Development Agenda and the SDGs, and especially for sustainable energy. And then while participating in the IRENA Youth Forum, I felt heard, and I felt that I really have a role, and I felt that I'm able to make a change, and I'm able to have a spot on the table for renewable energy and for advocating for sustainable development. So if we all know that youth worldwide as a key asset, and I don't want that we see youth as one of the beneficiaries of the energy transition or sustainable development. We need to see youth as a key player, because indeed youth is a key player in this transition, not because I'm a young person, but based on facts and based on what we are seeing. So if we see, for example, Africa as the youngest continent in the world with 60% young population below 26 years, also Africa has the lowest access to energy, especially the sub-Saharan region. So if we invest in this young population, I believe Africa would drive its energy transition and will raise the electrification rate and the clean ways for cooking and other benefits that can drive other sectors like education and industry. So in different countries around the world, youth really play a key role as an asset for advancing the sustainable energy transition, because they are active and employed with intergovernmental organizations like IRENA. They are participating and volunteering with non-profit organizations. They are active in the public sector, and they are also self-employed, whether in the urban or rural areas. So in developing countries, youth, especially in rural communities, they play a crucial role in developing renewable energy, because as we know, rural places, they have a great potential in developing renewable energy solutions, as they are abundant with renewable energy sources. There's also a need in promoting youth employment in renewable energy enterprises at the national setting, and engaging youth will release a new energy that will accomplish the SDGs, and it will help us reaching the climate change targets. Another thing is that youth, they have innovation, they have energy, and we need to know how we're gonna direct this energy the best way possible. So for example, the different ways that youth are engaging in energy. They are developing mini grids in rural areas. They are conducting training programs for other youth to enhance their capabilities. They are making energy monitoring solutions that solve issues for big industries, not just small businesses. So youth here are all also like creating opportunities for other youth and reducing the unemployment rates. They are developing solar-powered camps, especially now in humanitarian settings, and they are developing solar-powered hospitals, as we are seeing now during COVID-19 pandemic. So youth are also promoting for technologies that are eco-friendly and less harmful. They are using artificial intelligence, robotics. They are using 3D printing, innovative business models and value chains. They are using recyclable materials to create solar panels. They are using biofuels. So youth are really playing here a crucial and strategic role in the energy transition and advancing the global recovery. They are leading campaigns, as we know, the international youth-led climate strike movement that led to legislations and taking actions by many policymakers and leaders around the world. So what we need to advance this role and to enhance it, I believe that youth need to be trusted. They need to feel that they are heard. So we need to make our voices and the voice of other youth heard, as like this opportunity today that WHO and the other organizers and its partners, they are giving us this opportunity to make our perspectives heard and to make the world know about the role of youth and what is the importance that renewable energy is playing in the sustainable energy transition and how sustainable development can be driven by youth. And also how we need to be well educated. So we need to know how we can advance the educational system and the educational curriculum to be well tailored to prepare the next generation of decision makers by including sustainable development and energy education into the curriculum, and starting from the youngest generation and starting from children. Also focusing on rural development where unemployment is high, but the potential is also is high, and including capacity building, more enhancing this capacity building and training for youth. So my question for Mr. Alex is, how do you see local governments can take action to support youth, to make their voices heard and to equip them? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that really valuable input. I think there's a lot of work that local governments need to do to ensure that youth really have a meaningful role to play in helping inform policy and helping inform energy futures. I think there's a problematic tendency to bring youth into spaces and for them to be somewhat tokenistically placed there, so that they don't have a meaningful say over what the actual discussion at the table is, and that actually more powerful players typically have a much larger say. And so I think that speaks to a lot about who has power around the table that youth are being asked to sit with. Often fossil fuel corporations, often governments that represent fossil fuel interests are much more powerful in those spaces. And so young people are brought in to maybe, youth wash those sorts of discussions. And I think the governments need to think very carefully. I mean, and I think young people also need to think carefully about which tables they're willing to sit at and whether they're legitimizing spaces that are actually deeply problematic and often quite corrupted by the very interests that are holding back the needed change. And I think those government decision makers also need to ask themselves whether they're willing to make the changes that young people are calling for. There's been very clear demands by young people across the world for very ambitious action. The name of this dialogue is Race to Zero. It's not take a detour and then finally get to zero eventually. It really is a race, and that race, the speed of it will determine the quality of our lives for generations to come. And so we need to be sure that we have decision makers that really listen to the voice of youth who are pushing for really ambitious action, because we know we're in the midst of a deep crisis and we need to be moving much, much faster. And we seem to be already losing a lot of this COVID recovery opportunity by investing more in fossil fuels, investing more in pollution rather than going in the right direction. So yeah, I think if youth want to get more involved, there's a question about reshaping that table. And I think there's also a question of the fact that there are lots of young people who want to be involved in energy here on the African continent. We have, as you said, the youngest population. We have deep unemployment, particularly here in South Africa. And sort of tokenistic small government interventions that maybe create a few jobs here and there are woefully inadequate to the task. So we need major government interventions, massive jobs and trainings programs so that young people can get involved. There's a lot of work that we urgently need to do to transform our energy systems. And here in South Africa, we have the 1 million climate jobs program, which trade unions, which young people, which civil society organizations have been calling for that transformative action. But the response that we've gotten from our government is to entrench us deeper, unfortunately, in the wrong direction often. And so I think there's a lot of demands that are out there and programs that could be implemented but aren't being implemented. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alex. Yeah, indeed, I agree with what you said.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex, and thank you so much, Asma, for your interesting remarks and suggestions on the next steps that we need to take to ensure youth engagement in clean energy transition and to get the commitment from the governments that we need. And so now for the next segment of our event, we will be moving on to Q&A with the youth speakers that are with us today. So I would like to invite again Asma, Jordan, and Purva to join me in our virtual stage. And I would like to start with a question that we received from Nvani about how we can mainstream renewable energy into local projects in the rural areas, because I believe all three of you have given remarks that relate to the local scope. And so I would like to ask for your insights on that. Maybe we can start with Jordan. Jordan, you're muted.
Thank you. This is a great question. I think where I'm at right now in Saskatchewan, our utility doesn't really allow for renewable projects to be happening, not grid tied anyways. So I think one of the solutions that we found is energy efficiency and retrofitting homes, and that kind of, you're really addressing a number of needs. It's not only the matter of energy, but it's also health, social development, and a whole like community-wide pulling together of people, of resources, and it becomes something bigger, right? Then people, really start to understand why energy is so important, right? It impacts everything in our communities. So where we're at is energy efficiency, housing programs. And I think, this is a natural progression in terms of working on a renewable project, if it's wind, solar, whatever it might be. So it's all a part of the process. And I guess what kind of funding you have available and what utilities allow for, because we're kind of bound by some of those things, and the politics and the priorities that are given to industry and other things kind of get in the way of that. So we're working with what we have, and that's how we've decided to address it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And definitely these are all important steps, and great to see that this work is already being done. And so, Asma, what are your thoughts about mainstreaming renewable energy in local communities?
I believe first we need to understand the local context, understand the issue, the opportunity, or the problem that we are addressing, And then we see the different resources that we have, the stakeholders that might help us in implementing renewable energy, and also seeing the need of our beneficiaries and our target. So it depends. So I believe youth can do different kinds of projects. They can be community-led projects, enterprises, or like small scale projects like mini grids. Or so it depends on the need and the different resources that we have, and also on the capacities and the skills.
Thank you, Asma. And definitely the role of entrepreneurship is crucial, and both engagement in private and public sector of young people. So now, Purva, my question to you, based on what we were asked by Nubani, is about the transfer of knowledge from the good practices that you've seen in India in empowering healthcare with clean energy. What are the ideas or solutions that you think could be transferred to other parts of the world?
I think in terms of ideas and solutions per se that can be transferred, first and foremost is understanding India being a very geographically and demographically rich country. The emphasis really is on bringing all different sorts of voices together. And we can only move forward once we know exactly what different sections of our societies really need. A lot of times I come across people in conversations who are having to choose between basic necessities, 2 meals a day versus shifting to renewable energy. And I think in situations like those, the choices are pretty clear. You don't have too much to choose out of. And I think it's very important to understand these contexts, no matter in what part of the world we are in. There are some intersectionalities that we consciously or subconsciously choose to ignore. And in terms of best practices in India, what we are trying to do through, for example, the Medical Students Association of India, is to capitalize on the access we have to such places. There are medical students in the most underdeveloped part of the country, and that is something we need to capitalize on. There are organizations working on clean energy that don't necessarily have that access, and the power eventually rests in collaboration and in finding strengths and weaknesses of these different youth organizations and even intergenerational organizations at large. So I know I've tried to say a lot in very little time, but if I had to summarize, we can only bring in these solutions and best practices through true collaboration, recognizing that sometimes things may look very independent, the thematics may look independent, like health and energy, but they're truly very deeply interconnected, and interconnected problems cannot be solved by independent solutions. The solutions have to be as integrated and intersectional as the problems itself.
Yeah. Thank you, Purva, for highlighting the badly needed intersectional and systemic solutions to our current problems. And definitely they need to involve different stakeholders and build up on networks and organizations that take action. And something that we're all looking forward to is the COP26 next year. And something that many young people are participating in is the NDC, National Determined Contribution Enhancement Process. So I would like to open the floor and ask you if you would like to share some good practices or suggestions on how young people can better organize to be involved in this process and advocate for climate action of their governments. We can go with whoever would like to speak out.
I can start.
Go ahead, Asma.
So I believe, like, for those youth who are already active in climate change advocacy and energy, they need to amplify more this engagement. And for those who are not yet active, they have all ways to start being active, whether they can volunteer, they can join different organizations, they can join the SDG 7 Youth Constituency. So they have all ways of engagement, and they have all ways of support, like IRENA and C4All and different organizations, and they need to start participating in the energy sphere by attending webinars, reading important articles and papers to get the knowledge about this field. So I believe it is important that we raise more awareness about how crucial climate change is and how important we need to go for sustainable energy.
Thank you, Asma. Jordan, would you like to share your comments?
Sure. So I think, if youth are looking to get involved, mobilize, get more information on anything, do your research, reach out to people that you think that are working in this space. Sorry. Don't feel alone is the main thing, right? Everybody's at different levels of understanding and where we're at in our projects, where we're at in our lives, and around the world, globally, we're all working for the same force, and that is to see prosperity for the future, and to see trees and lakes and people be coexisting, and I think, the biggest thing is just know that there's support out there for whatever it is that you are interested in, and ask questions, ask a lot of questions, and don't be afraid to build something that doesn't exist. I think we're very comfortable in doing things and building things that we know that are already there, right? But some of the most courageous things are doing things that have never been done before. So don't feel silly in your adventure and your vision of something that is not there. I think that's the beauty of energy, and that's the beauty of youth, is believing in something greater than what already exists. So take advantage of that little box that we sit in right now of youth, to just come up with the craziest, wildest ideas that you can think of, and try and follow that. That's my advice.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, some of the ideas that I picked up from you are traits, are courage, curiosity, and leveraging on being young. So I hope we can all utilize it. And now, Purva, would you like to share your suggestions on involvement in climate action?
Most definitely. And before I begin with my comments, I would like to say that I really echo Asma and Jordan's thoughts. But just adding on to what's already been said, I think as young people, we tend to underestimate our abilities and our power, and get bogged down by we're not probably as experienced as some others in the room. But I think while we are organizing around future events, not only COP, but all engagements in general, we need to do two things. First is recognize that everybody brings something to the table. It's okay to not have 40, 50 years of experience in doing something. With 40 or 50 years of doing the same thing, you bring in a lot of rigidity, because you're basically traveling on the same school of thought. So if you don't have that, you're probably more likely, again, nothing against anybody, but you're probably more likely to bring in a lot of creativity, which a lot of these tables need. And the second thing is to take responsibility of bringing more voices. A lot of times I enter rooms where I'm probably the only tiny Indian girl, And I have started to take it as my responsibility to make it a point to have more people that look like me. And I'm sure we'd be living in a much different place if there are more like us in these spaces where decisions are being made, because it's not one voice that we need. If we have one voice, if we have our voice, it's kind of a moral responsibility to bring in more. And I think from my end, those would be two very quick reflections on what we should have in mind while we're organizing around future engagements.
Thank you so much, Purva. Definitely, I think very recently we have seen some important developments for inclusion of greater demographics in the most important decision-making positions in the world. And hopefully we can see more of that in the months and years to come. So now I would like to wrap up the Q&A. But it was really great hearing all of your remarks, and we know that we are all great. All of you are great practitioners, so I hope that our participants will take it away with them and apply it in their action. Also, very brief note of happy birthday to Asma. I believe it's a great way to celebrate her birthday, and yeah, all the best for you. So the Race to Zero dialogues are meant to be here not only to speak, but also to act. And we've seen some fantastic initiatives in the energy space emerging, led by youth. So today we'll take the time to introduce two of those initiatives. And firstly, I would like to invite Helen Watts, Director of Partnership and founder of the Global Youth Energy Outlook, that she will present to us. So Helen, over to you.
Perfect, thank you, Benjamin. And very happy to be here today. Great discussion so far this morning. So really delighted to be here and speak a little bit to what we're feeling very confident will be a very exciting initiative for all of you who are here today for this discussion. So Student Energy, we're a global youth-led organization. We have a network of about 50,000 young people around the world in over 6 continents. And so we've been building our movement now for over 11 years, which means we've really seen kind of the speed and scale at which young people are ready to mobilize around climate and energy action. But what we recognize kind of over the last 2 years or so, that there is still a fundamental lack of data and evidence around what young people around the world are specifically calling for from the energy transition, more specifically. And so we set out on a bit of a mission to design a research process that would be youth-led and really serve to identify those specific actions that young people are calling for, which will ultimately create really enabling pathways for different sectors, governments, leaders to work tangibly with young people on making those actions a reality. So the Global Youth Energy Outlook will be the first youth-led global data set of youth perspectives on the energy transition, including the priorities for policy drivers and levers, financial flows and investment, socioeconomic transformations, and technology R&D. So not just looking at, what technologies do we maybe see happening now that are ready to be scaled and deployed, what technologies haven't emerged yet, but really looking at that more holistic, integrated approach to the energy transition. There's a lot that young people want to achieve in tandem with decarbonizing our energy system and ensuring energy access, things like greater social equity, and of course, greater quality of health, biodiversity. So all of those factors will feed into this report to be a really comprehensive roadmap of what young people want to see. Another important piece to just mention is that the Outlook is not being led by myself. It is being led by 12 really capable and inspiring young people in 10 regions around the world. So those 12 young people were selected through a rigorous process and are now leading the research process in their regions and globally. The research process is happening in 2 main phases. The methodological approach for the first phase is survey-based opinion data. And the second phase, which is happening currently, is interactive dialogues across different regions around the world. So finally, the most important part is when will this come out? So the Outlook is currently underway. The research process is happening as we speak. And the outlook data will continue to be kind of aggregated and then analyzed over the next 6 months or so, and we will begin to release findings throughout 2021 with its final launch of the full report at COP26 in Glasgow. So we're really seeing that as a huge opportunity to bring this really focused youth vision for the energy transition to the space at COP26 and be able to facilitate those pathways for young people to work collaboratively with different organizations and sectors and governments who attend COP. So really looking forward to sharing more on this project with all of you, and please do kind of stay engaged with Student Energy on this work, as we'll be really excited to have you all involved. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Helen, and congrats to you and all your team for your amazing work. And we hope that many of the participants will get in touch and will join the Outlook process. And so now on to present the second initiative of today. It will be Sajid Vijaysurya, who's the founder of Science Policy Circle, the organization that is the global focal point of SDG 7 Youth Constituency and has been extensively involved in the climate and energy space in the last few years. So Sajid, over to you.
Thank you, Benjamin, for the introduction, and brilliant work, Helen, on your project as well. So I'm here to introduce the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub, which is a flagship project led by the SDG 7 Youth Constituency and the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. So the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth is the formal engagement and avenue for young people in the UN processes. So therefore involved in many thematic areas of work of the United Nations. So when the Sustainable Energy for All decade was announced in 2014, and then the Sustainable Energy Goal 7 was introduced in 2015, we were closely following the processes led by the United Nations, and we were continuously engaged in the conversation. So one thing that leading up to the Climate Action Summit last year, what we realized was there was a lacking of a space where the youth-led energy nexus projects are not being sort of highlighted at a common place, in a common platform. So after the initiation and the introduction of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency, what we have focused on is to create that space, that platform where the energy agencies and UN agencies working on energy sector, energy transition can visualize the youth-led energy projects around the world, and then perhaps go into further capacity building of these young people, and also provide support in whichever capacity they can. So taking up this challenge, SDG 7 Youth Constituency has created the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub. And so it is a flagship project by the constituency and involves many partners, including Sustainable Energy for All, UNIDO, SDSN Youth, UNICEF, and IEEE Power and Energy Society, and the Climate Tracker. So this is a coming together of many entities to create a youth platform to showcase the projects. So what is most important now is the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub launch is coming up in 2 days. So the keynote speakers of this event is going to be Damilola Ogunbi. She is the special representative to the United Nations Secretary General for SC for All. And also another keynote speaker at this event will be Dr. Martin Keller, the director of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, along with the partners, representatives from UNIDO, UNICEF, SDSN Youth, and IEEE. And this session will also be led by the young people, which is most important. So that's what I wanted to highlight today. You can register for the hub launch as well as follow closely the updates from the Youth, the Sustainable Energy Hub into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you much, Sajid, for presenting the initiative. I personally am looking forward to seeing many of you during our event in 2 days. And now we'll move on to the closing remarks. And firstly, I would like to introduce Meredith Adler, who's the Executive Director of Student Energy, and will share her thoughts about the session and what's next for us going forward to the healthy green recovery. Meredith, over to you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. And as he mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Student Energy. Along with Helen Watts, we run a network of 50,000 young people in over 120 different countries and host an ecosystem of skill and capacity building programs to really help young people contribute to the renewable energy transition and building healthy communities. I think in reflecting on the dialogues today, I'm so impressed with the work of the young women and others who have participated. And I think it needs to be highlighted that there's an incredible amount of space to move beyond just inviting young people to events or letting them be in the room to a space of meaningful collaboration, where we're really thinking about what does it look like to work between generations, to leverage what both have to offer in order to connect young people with those in power who can help them take action on climate. And I think on the flip side, it needs to be recognized how much young people have to offer. Young people are incredible connectors in their communities. I think you heard this from all three of our speakers. And just look at the election that was perhaps decided over the weekend. It was the youth vote that came out for the climate. And I think these things are often overlooked, is that young people are leveraged for elections and then not thought about often in between, but it's a huge mistake in terms of thinking about where innovation can come from, but also where those peer-to-peer connections that really future-proof our climate action can come from. And the work that we do at Student Energy and others are doing as well is really intended to make sure that young people have the skills and the toolkit and the vocabulary that they need to be able to enter these spaces and meaningfully work together with other generations. And I would encourage everyone to think about the work that they're doing and how it could be more greatly enhanced by working with young people and by making sure that there's a room for meaningful collaboration and that you're interested in both changing your mind and thinking about how we can do things more effectively together. Another thought from today is that the energy sector doesn't look a lot like our panelists that we had today. Often the sector is missing the voice of young people, but also people from different countries from outside of Europe or North America. And so this is another call to action to think about how do we grow up the energy sector and the health sector to look different and to be more representative of the world and of the people that we're all serving. And finally, our call to action would really be for young people and others to get involved with more youth movements. The SDG 7 Youth Constituency and Student Energy are both working to co-create pathways along with Science Policy Circle to collaborate on what empowerment looks like, on filling in these skills gaps that we need for more young entrepreneurs and innovators in the energy space, and to cultivate more solutions in health. And so I would encourage you all to get involved there.
Thank you so much, Meredith, for sharing your insights and for your continuous work for advancing the sustainable energy transition and youth involvement in it. So now for the closing remarks, I would also like to invite Maria to share her insights from this event.
Thank you, Benjamin, and thank you all. This has been extremely rich and energizing dialogue, and it's really very encouraging to see that young people is already so much infiltrated on all the political issues at the country level, at regional level, at the global level, in all the political opportunities that are offered in networks. So for me, it was really very, very rewarding. Let me tell you who is the enemy. I think we are all trying to promote this healthy and green recovery. We are talking about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels they should go back to the past and stay there forever. So I think you have a very good cause there. Let me tell you that the fossil fuels at the moment, they are still responsible for the many deaths we were describing, plus the fact that when we talk about taxes that we are paying for subsidizing fossil fuels, still a lot of money is going into that direction. And the health damage that the combustion of those fossil fuels are causing to our health has not been considered. So I think you need to focus on who is your enemy and how easy it could be to rid of this enemy, knowing that we have now renewable energy, we have technological options, we have opportunities to, with the stimulus packages that now the governments will be putting for the recovery after COVID-19, we need to make sure that the money is going into the right direction. And I'm afraid we are giving you very much part of this control task. We will all be monitoring and checking, but you as the youth, as the generation that will be suffering more if those investments are not done properly, you need to check what your governments are doing with the taxpayers' money, and making sure that now with the recovery, the same mistakes we were doing before will not be made again. And I'm afraid we have signals already that some of the money for the recovery is still going to fossil fuels. So please check, watch, be prepared to denounce. People like Patil, who lives in India, I'm sure you are checking the terrible levels of pollution that your country is suffering every day. So we need your voice, we need your engagement. I know that we are giving you a lot of tasks instead of saying how we will incorporate your voice. From WHO and the health community, we will do our best to create a space for you to have a voice. Once you have a voice, I'm afraid you have a lot of tasks. You need to be very well prepared with the knowledge that you have demonstrated today that you have about the political processes, the expenditure, the wrong decisions that the governments are making. You need to be prepared to bring the force of all the networks where you are represented. You need to be, this has to be your cause. Each generation has a cause. I'm afraid you can choose because there are many that you are confronting today. We are confronting the fact that we are destroying our environment. We are confronted to the fact that we are destroying our ecosystems, the biodiversity. We are polluting oceans. We are polluting the air we breathe. So we have so many causes, but I think this healthy energy transition could be a very good cause for a generation like yours, because you have plenty of things to gain, and you will be able to motivate so many people around you if you use the right arguments. This is about the health of you. This is about avoiding the fact that now the price of all of these polluted fuels that we are using is paid by our lungs and our brains. You know that we are even losing our intelligence because we are exposed to these high levels of air pollution. So I want you to be ready to denounce. I want to be ready to propose the wonderful ideas that you have been proposing today. You need to be ready to be stubborn as well, and you need to be ready to motivate many other people, because well, we all know that we need you, and we will be there, of course, to join forces with you, but this is the generation that has to create and provoke this very much needed transformation. So I'm already transformed by your energy. I hope you will maintain that energy to transform the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria, for this incredibly empowering and inspiring speech. We've been hearing a lot about WHO in the last few months because of your incredibly important role in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are very grateful for that. But also, this is a good reminder how closely health and energy and climate issues are related. And we're really looking forward to, as young people, engaging also with WHO on this topic. And I hope that your words will propel everyone to greater action on clean energy transition and climate action, and in particular, zero carbon recovery, which is so important as many governments, as you mentioned, are now passing their recovery packages. So this way we have arrived to the end of our session, and we would like to thank everyone for joining us. There's been over 100 of you staying with us for the last 90 minutes, and with many more probably joining us on the streaming platform. So as the closing remark, we would like to invite you to other Race to Zero events, including the Race to Zero Coalition from COVID-19 to COP26 session hosted by C40 Cities, which is going to take place at 4 p.m. GMT, where we will see again Dr. Maria Neira giving her keynote remarks, and then dialogue organized by WHO and partners about Race to Zero carbon road transport, starting at 6 p.m. GMT. So also don't forget about joining us on social media. And now to close, I would like to again thank all of the participants, all of the panelists who joined us today to share their remarks, but also thanks to the incredible team who've been working on putting this event together, especially to Alexandra, Tess, Jennifer, Arthur, who've been really doing a lot to bring this event to life. And we are very grateful to all the team for pushing this agenda, and especially for including youth so prominently in this event. So thank you so much, and have a nice day, night, wherever you are.